The selection ceremony for the rose had all the pomp and circumstance of a funeral, which Thorn supposed was fitting. After all, they were choosing who would die. She stood at the back of the crowd, arms crossed, watching the priesthood parade her sister around like a prized heifer. Lysa looked ethereal in white silk that cost more than their family had seen in a decade, all paid for by the vampires, naturally. They liked their sacrifices well-dressed. "Behold!" The high priest's voice boomed across the square. "The Rose of Velros, chosen for her purity, her beauty, her—" Thorn tuned the word vomit out. The ceremony continued with its rehearsed reverence. Incense, thick enough to choke on, chanting in the old tongue that probably meant, "Please don't eat the rest of us," and enough bowing and scraping to wear holes in knees. Thorn had seen it all before. Not the rose selection, that only happened once a century, but the way humans prostrated themselves before their vampire overlords. It made her skin crawl with rage. Instead of fighting that overgrown mosquito that took their young and terrorized their community, they fed it, and Thorn's sister was next. Lysa stood on the dais, 17 years old and trembling like a leaf. The crown of white roses on her head looked heavy enough to snap her delicate neck. When she turned, Thorn caught her eye, saw the terror there, the silent plea. "I'm sorry," Lysa mouthed. Sorry for being chosen. Sorry for being beautiful. Sorry for leaving Thorn alone. The rage that lived in Thorn's chest, that old familiar fire, roared to life. She couldn't let her sister be taken. "I volunteer!" The words cut through the ceremony like a blade through silk. Every head turned. The high priest's mouth hung open, revealing teeth yellowed by centuries of wine and cowardice. Thorn pushed through the crowd, ignoring the hands that tried to stop her. "I said, I volunteer. Take me instead." "You cannot simply—" "Why not?" She reached the steps of the dais. "The treaty says a rose must be given. Doesn't specify which one." The priest's face went through several interesting color changes. "The rose must be pure, untouched, a virgin offering of—" "Well, that ship has sailed, hit an iceberg, and sunk with all hands." Thorn grinned, showing too many teeth. "But I'm human. I'm breathing, and I'm here. And I'm strong." Above them, perched on the cathedral spire like decorative gargoyles, 3 vampires watched with glittering eyes. One of them, pale as bone with hair like spilled ink, tilted his head with interest. Thorn climbed the steps. Up close, Lysa looked even younger, swimming in all that white fabric. "Get down, Lys." The lead vampire dropped from the spire, landing with inhuman grace. The crowd scrambled back. He was beautiful in the way a blade is beautiful, all sharp edges and deadly purpose. "How novel." His voice was like aged whiskey, smooth and burning. "A volunteer, and such a—" His nostrils flared. "Pungent one. You smell of horses and rage." "And you smell like death took a bath in sewage, but we can't all be perfect." The vampire's lips twitched. "You realize what you're offering? The rose goes to Lord Alvrin. She does not return." "I'm not an idiot." Thorn met his gaze steadily. The vampire circled her, predatory. "You're no virgin." "Shocking, I know. A woman of 26 who's actually lived. Alert the town criers." "You're disrespectful." The vampire circled her. "You're observant." Thorn didn't react to its intimidation. "You're going to die." Thorn struggled. "We all are. Mine just has better scheduling." The vampire stopped in front of her, close enough that she could see her reflection in his black eyes. No, not her reflection. Nothing reflected in those depths. "Lord Alvrin will find you interesting." He smiled, revealing fangs like pearl daggers. "Very well. The rose is chosen. One moment Thorn stood defiant on the dais. The next, she was slung over his shoulder like a sack of grain. "Thorn!" Lysa screamed. The last thing she saw before the world blurred into motion was her sister's face, grateful and grieving in equal measure. Castle Avron was a wound in reality that happened to be made of stone and shadow and things that whispered in languages that predated human speech. Thorn had expected Gothic grandeur. What she got was organic horror. The walls breathed. The floors had veins. Portraits followed her with eyes that occasionally blinked. "Charming," she said to the vampire escorting her. "Did you decorate it yourself or hire someone with a profound fear of right angles?" He didn't answer. They never did. Vampires, she was learning, had two modes: grandiose speeches or sullen silence. No middle ground. They descended. The castle was an iceberg, a small horror above, an enormous nightmare below. Stairs spiraled down through chambers that defied physics, past doors that screamed when you looked at them too long. "The Lord waits," her escort finally said, stopping before doors of black wood shot through with what looked unsettlingly like veins. The doors opened on their own. The chamber beyond was unexpected. Where the rest of the castle writhed with grotesque life, this room was still, empty, just stone and shadow and him. Lord Alvrin stood with his back to her, facing a window that showed nothing but darkness. He was tall, lean, dressed in black that seemed to absorb light. His hair fell to his waist, white as bone. "Leave us," he said. His voice was nothing like the other vampires. No performance, no grandeur, just exhaustion distilled into sound. The doors closed. Thorn was alone with death. "So," she said, because silence had never been her friend, "do we do this here, or is there a specific bloodletting chamber? I'd hate to stain the floors. Well, actually, I wouldn't hate it, but why did you volunteer?" He turned then, and Thorn's breath caught. Beautiful. That was the first thought. Instinctive and unwanted. Beautiful like winter. Stark, pale, merciless. But his eyes were ancient. Empty. Like looking into abandoned houses where life used to live. "My sister," Thorn said simply. "She's 17, and she still believes the world might be kind. I know better." Love. He said it like naming a disease. How tediously human. "Right, because vampires are known for their emotional complexity. Tell me, do you practice brooding or does it come naturally?" He moved closer. No, he simply was closer. Space bending to his will. This close, she could see the marble perfection of his skin, the unnatural stillness of his chest that drew no breath. The rose is meant to be pure, innocent, a virgin sacrifice to ensure the treaty holds. "Yeah, well, you got me instead. A foul-mouthed stable hand. Disappointing, I'm sure." His hand rose, fingers ghosting near her throat, not touching, not yet. "Do you know what I am going to do to you?" "Drain me dry, I assume. Though if you're looking for vintage innocence, you're gonna get more of a house red. Robust, with hints of horse manure and poor quality mead." His lips twitched. Almost a smile. Almost. "You talk too much." "Yeah? When's the last time you had a conversation that wasn't about doom and gloom?" "Longer than you've been alive." Thorn smirked. "Sad." His fingers finally touched her throat. Ice against warmth. Thorn fought not to flinch. "The ceremony is tomorrow night," he said. "You will be bathed, dressed, prepared." "Double it and give it to the next one." He blinked. It was the most human expression she'd seen from him. "Double?" "I'll do the dying part, that's the deal. But I'm not playing dress-up. You want my blood? You get it as is. Farm fresh, no preservatives." "You cannot simply..." "Why does everyone keep saying that?" Thorn stepped back, breaking his touch. "Look, I'm here. I'm human. I'm the rose. But I'm not pretending to be something I'm not just to make my death prettier for you. Take it or leave it." Silence stretched between them, taut as a bowstring. Then, Alvrin laughed. It was a terrible sound. Rusty, painful, like he'd forgotten how. It lasted only a moment before dying, but the echo of it changed something in the room. "Fine," he said. "Come as you are, Thorn of the Stables. We'll see if your blood tastes as sharp as your tongue." He turned away, dismissal clear. He paused at another door she hadn't noticed. "Your chamber is 3 floors up. Second corridor, the door with roses. Try not to antagonize the paintings. They bite." He was gone before she could respond, leaving her alone in the empty chamber. "Well," Thorn said to no one, "that went better than expected." Somewhere in the walls, something laughed. She had a feeling it disagreed. The next night came too soon and not soon enough. Thorn had spent the day exploring, because waiting to die was boring and she'd be damned if she spent her last hours cowering. The castle was a living maze, each corridor an organ in some vast, unknowable body. She found kitchens that cooked nothing, libraries full of books that bled when opened, and a ballroom where ghostly figures danced to music only they could hear. The paintings did, indeed, bite. When night fell, and it fell like a stone here, no gentle twilight, they came for her. She'd refused the white dress, the rose crown, the perfumed oils. She wore her own clothes, practical leather and worn cotton, boots that had seen better decades. If she was going to die, she'd die as herself. The ritual chamber was at the heart of the castle, downstairs that seemed to descend forever. The walls here weren't stone, but something organic, pulsing with a rhythm that might have been a heartbeat if hearts could be made of nightmare. Alvrin waited at the center, surrounded by vampires in ceremonial robes that did nothing to hide their predator nature. He wore simple black, his white hair unbound. In the flickering torchlight, he looked like a beautiful corpse. "The rose comes willing," someone intoned. "The rose comes pissed off that you made her walk down 1,000 stairs, but sure, let's go with willing," Thorn huffed, still catching her breath. Several vampires hissed. Alvrin raised a hand and they fell silent. "Approach." Thorn did, each step measured. The other vampires formed a circle, witnesses to whatever ancient nonsense was about to happen. At the center was an altar, not stone, but what looked like a single massive tooth carved into a platform. "Classy," she muttered. Alvrin's lips twitched. "Kneel." "Rather not. Bad knees. Stable work, you know." "Thorn?" "Fine, fine. But if I can't get back up, it's your fault." She knelt. The tooth altar was warm beneath her hands, unpleasantly organic. Around them, the vampires began to chant in a language that predated human speech, each word a small violence against reality. Alvrin moved behind her, gathering her hair aside with surprising gentleness. Any last words? His breath. No, not breath. He didn't breathe. His presence was cold against her neck. Thorn felt her heartbeat faster with fear. She refused to show it. He'd probably taste it in her soon enough. "Yeah, tell my sister the brown horse's name is Buttercup. She keeps calling it Daisy, and it's really starting to—" His fangs pierced her throat. Pain, yes, sharp and bright. But then, fire. Thorn had expected to feel cold, empty, drained. Instead, she burned. Every drop of blood that left her carried flame, memory, life lived so fiercely it scorched. She felt Alvrin shudder against her, heard him make a sound that might have been pain or pleasure or both. The chanting stopped. She was dying, felt it in the way her heart stuttered, the way darkness crept in at the edges. But she was taking something with him, or giving something. the boundary blurred. Images flooded through the connection, not her memories, but blood memories. A goddess weeping, guardians kneeling, betrayal sharp as fangs, a heart torn out, still beating, buried beneath stone and centuries, and Alvin wrenched away with a cry that shattered the silence. He fell to his knees, convulsing. Blood, her blood, streaming from his mouth. Thorn swayed, caught herself. She should be dead. She should be empty. Alvin screamed. His pale skin flushed with color. His chest heaved with sudden, impossible breath. His heart beat. Once, twice, thunder in the silence. Thorn touched her throat. The wounds were closed. No, not closed. Healed. Changed. She could feel her blood moving differently, carrying something new, something old, something that had been waiting. Alvin raised his head and his eyes. His eyes were gold, warm, alive, terrified. "What did you do to me?" His voice broke on the words. Thorn laughed, wild and inappropriate. "I have absolutely no idea." Around them, the castle began to scream. The first thing Alvin felt in 300 years was pain. Not the dull ache of existence he'd grown accustomed to. Real, vivid, mortal pain. His chest burned where his heart stuttered to life, each beat a small betrayal. His lungs, decorative for centuries, suddenly remembered their purpose and dragged in air that tasted of stone and terror and her. Thorn, the impossible woman whose blood was acid and starlight and memories that didn't belong to either of them. Someone, Cassius his second, reached for Thorn with clawed hands. "Don't!" The command tore from Alvin's throat, raw and desperate. "Don't touch her!" He didn't know why, only that the thought of anyone else tasting what he'd tasted, sharing what he'd been given. His fangs retracted with a wet sound that made him gag. "My lord!" Cassius knelt beside him, careful not to touch. "What has she done?" "I don't know." Terrifying truth. The certainty of undeath. The predictable hunger, the comfortable numbness. All gone. Replaced by chaos that pulsed with each impossible heartbeat. Thorn stood slowly, one hand still pressed to her throat. She should be dead. Drained. Another rose wilted on the altar of necessity. Instead, she looked. "Different question," she said, voice steadier than it should be. "What have you done to me? Because I'm fairly certain I should be room temperature right now, and instead I feel like I swallowed lightning." "The rose lives." Elisande, oldest of his court, circled them both with predatory interest. "The rose lives, and the Lord breathes. How fascinating." Elisande smiled, showing far too many teeth. "Perhaps we should taste her ourselves, see what—" "No." Alvin was standing. He didn't remember standing, but his body, his treacherous, warming, living body, had moved without permission, placed itself between Thorn and the others. "No?" Elisande frowned. "You forget yourself, Alvin. The rose belongs to all of us. The treaty is fulfilled." He fought to control his voice, to find the cold command that had served him for centuries. Difficult when his throat kept trying to close with some emotion he couldn't name. "I drank, she died. She stands before us." "Details." Thorn stepped around him, apparently unconcerned with the room full of predators. The world tilted. Alvin caught her as she fell, instinct overriding thought. She was warm, so warm. How had he forgotten what warmth felt like? "The change," someone whispered. "She's changing." Into what? Alvin found himself stroking her hair, another betrayal of body over mind. What is she becoming? "What are you becoming?" Elisande countered. "Your skin warms, your heart beats. You breathe, Alvin. You're becoming mortal." Mortal. Finite. capable of true death. "Get out. All of you. Go!" Alvrin dismissed them. "You cannot dismiss us like... I am still Lord of Avron." He met Elisand's gaze. "Challenge me if you dare, but do it tomorrow, when we both know what I am. Tonight, I need... He needed to understand, needed to think. The court exchanged glances, calculations. Vampires were patient predators. They could wait a night to see how this impossibility played out. One by one, they filed out. Elisand went last, pausing at the door. "If you're becoming mortal," she said softly, "you know what that means. The protection of Ovran, the treaty, your position, all forfeit, unless... Unless?" Her smile was all fang. "Unless she's becoming what you were. Balance, Alvrin. Always balance." The door closed with finality. Thorn pulled back enough to look at him. "You have gold eyes now. Add it to the list of impossibilities. How do you feel?" "Like someone hollowed me out and filled me with, I don't know, lightning? Starlight? Really aggressive indigestion," she frowned. "I can hear your heartbeat." She tried to stand, swayed. "So, what now? Because, I'll be honest, the vampire orientation packet was light on details about what happens when the sacrifice doesn't take." Alvrin found himself laughing. Actually laughing. Not the bitter sound from before, but something almost warm. "I have no idea. This has never happened before." "So, what's this about you going mortal? Because that seems bad for you." Alvrin sighed. "Perhaps. Or perhaps it's the first good thing to happen in centuries." She studied him with those impossible amber eyes. "You're taking this very well." "I'm in shock. Talk to me tomorrow when reality sets in." "Tomorrow," she smiled, and it was sharp and soft simultaneously. "Think we'll make it that far? Together or separately?" "Dealer's choice." He squeezed her hand gently. Gentleness, another thing he'd forgotten he was capable of. "Together, I think. Whatever you are, whatever I'm becoming, we're connected now. Your blood in my veins, my essence, I suppose, in yours. Romantic, in a deeply disturbing way. I have been told I have a gift for that." They stood in the ritual chamber, surrounded by centuries of death, hands clasped like children afraid of the dark, children stumbling towards something neither understood. "Your room or mine?" Thorn asked. "Because I'm about to fall over, and I'd rather do it somewhere without teeth for floors." "Mine. It's closer, and has a bed you can actually sleep in without nightmares." "Vampires have beds?" "We like to read." "Do you really?" "No, but it sounded better than we keep them for decoration and occasional brooding." She laughed, bright in the darkness. "Lead the way, Lord Heartbeat." He led her from the chamber, hyper-aware of every sensation. The stone beneath his feet, the air in his lungs, her pulse echoing his own. Behind them, the tooth altar cracked down the middle, weeping something that might have been blood or might have been older than blood. Neither of them looked back. Thorn dreamed of drowning in starlight. She stood in a place that wasn't, between heartbeats, between thoughts, between the moment of death and whatever came after. The goddess waited there, patient as stone. Virel had been beautiful once. Now she was something beyond beauty or horror, a concept given form, a memory wearing flesh like an ill-fitting coat. Her chest gaped open where her heart should be, the wound fresh despite the centuries.
"He's drinking me slowly," the goddess said, conversational. "Each rose, each sacrifice, returns a drop of what was stolen. You're the first to give it back."
"I didn't mean to." Thorn felt strange admitting to it. He looked so empty. When he drank, I could feel how hollow he was. It made me angry."
Anger.
Virel smiled with too many mouths.
Yes, that's what they couldn't train. Love they took easily, twisted it to obsession, possession. Joy became gluttony, peace became stagnation, but anger, righteous fury at the wrongness of the world that burns too hot for their cold hearts.
"So, what am I now?"
"Becoming."
The goddess circled her, leaving footprints of light.
"As is he. The divine and mortal trading places. It's happened before in other forms. Gods who loved mortality enough to choose it. Mortals who burned bright enough to ascend. You're both. Neither. Something new."
"That's unhelpfully vague."
"I'm a dying god, not an instruction manual."
Virel touched Thorn's face with fingers that felt like prayer.
"But I'll tell you this. What he drank can't be returned. What you're becoming can't be stopped. The only choice is what you do with it."
"And if I don't want to be a vampire?"
"Then be something else. The blood remembers more than death, child. It remembers when we were all one thing, before the hungry ones learned to take without giving."
The goddess began to fade.
"Wake up. He's dying faster than you're becoming. Balance must be chosen, not imposed."
Thorn woke gasping, heart hammering against ribs that felt too small. The bed, Alvrin's bed, silk and shadow, was soaked with sweat. Dawn light crept through windows she could have sworn were light-proof, painting everything in shades of gold and blood. Alvrin lay beside her, and for a moment she thought he was dead. His skin had gone gray, black veins spreading from his chest like cracks in porcelain. His breathing, that impossible new breathing, came in short, pained gasps.
"Shit!"
She pressed a hand to his chest, felt his heart stuttering like a broken bird.
"Alvrin, wake up!"
His eyes opened, no longer gold but a muddy hazel, thoroughly human and thoroughly wrong. "Hurts."
"What hurts?"
"Everything. Being, feeling." He laughed, bitter. "I'd forgotten pain could be so comprehensive." She could see it, really see it, with whatever new sight she'd been given. His body was rejecting the change, trying to die properly this time. 3 centuries of undeath didn't translate easily to life. He was burning through her blood too fast, candle lit at both ends.
"The goddess says you're dying."
"You dreamed of her?"
"Less dream, more divine intervention."
Thorn chewed her lip, tasting copper and starlight.
"She said something about balance being chosen. What happens if you drink from me again?"
"I don't know. You're not human anymore, not entirely." He reached up, fingers tracing her face with reverent confusion. "I remember everything. That's the problem." His hand fell. "Every rose, every death. I think I'm too empty to hold life. Like pouring water into a shattered cup."
"Then we fixed the cup."
"Thorn."
"No, you don't get to give up. Not when I'm stuck becoming whatever I'm becoming. We figured this out."
"Together." He smiled, sad and fond. "You make it sound simple."
"Most things are, when you strip away the dramatic nonsense."
She sat back, decision crystallizing.
"Drink from me. Not like before, not the ritual, just drink. See what happens."
"It could kill you."
"Everything could kill me. I work with horses. Do you know how many people die from horse kicks annually?"
She bit her wrist, quick and deep. The pain was different now, cleaner, purposeful. Blood welled, but it was wrong. Too bright, too alive. It sparked with something that wasn't quite divinity, but remembered its shape.
"Drink,"
she commanded. He hesitated. Then, with a sound like surrender, took her wrist in shaking hands and drank. This time, she felt the pull differently. Not draining, but sharing. The fire in her blood met the emptiness in him, and instead of consuming, began to build. Enough! Alvrin pulled away, but gently. The gray had receded from his skin, the black veins fading. His eyes were gold again, but human gold, warm and alive. I understand now.
Understand what?
Why you? He sat up, cradling her wrist, pressing torn fabric to the wound. The roses were chosen for purity because we thought that's what divinity wanted. Innocence, perfection. But gods are messy, complicated, human in all the ways that matter.
I'm not a god.
No, but you're becoming something that remembers what they were before we made them perfect and distant. He kissed her wrist, soft as snowfall. And I'm becoming something that remembers what we were before we chose hunger over feeling.
So we're both disasters in progress.
Beautifully put. She laughed, then stopped.
Do you hear that?
Footsteps in the corridor, many, armed. The court, Alvin said quietly. They've decided not to wait.
How many?
Dozens, maybe more. He stood, pulling her up with him. Elisand's been planning this for centuries. A mortal lord can't hold Avron.
But I'm not mortal, not anymore.
Thorn flexed her fingers, feeling power coil beneath her skin like seeping serpents.
Neither are you. We're something else.
Something untested, unproven.
Untested is just another word for unpredictable.
She grinned, all teeth and terrible possibility. The door exploded inward. Elisand stood in the wreckage, backed by vampires in ancient armor. Lord Alvrin, you're relieved of your position. By whose authority? His voice had found its power again, warmth and cold in perfect tension. By right of blood, you're mortal, weak, unfit to... Thorn moved. She didn't know how. One moment she stood beside Alvrin. The next, she had Elisand by the throat. The ancient vampire's eyes widened in shock.
He's not mortal, Thorn said pleasantly. Neither am I. We're something you don't have a name for yet. But please, do go on about weakness. I'm fascinated.
Elisand hissed, twisting in her grip. Fast, so fast, but Thorn was faster. Elisand whimpered in pain. Thorn released her, stepping back.
Here's what's going to happen. You're going to leave, all of you. Let's figure out what we are.
You can't. Alvrin stepped forward, taking Thorn's hand. Where their skin touched, light bloomed. Not vampire cold or mortal warmth, but something between, balanced on the knife's edge of transformation. The court wavered. Vampires were creatures of certainty, and nothing about this was certain. This isn't over, Elisand promised. They left. Not fleeing, vampires didn't flee, but they left quickly, whispering among themselves about impossibilities and heresies and the light that had bloomed where the Lord and his rose touched. When they were gone, Thorn sagged against Alvrin. Now? She tilted her head up, amber eyes bright with possibility. Now we figure out what a half-dead vampire lord and a stable hand with divine indigestion can do together. Any ideas?
A few, starting with breakfast. Do you eat now?
Can I eat? Because I'm starving, and if I have to drink blood for sustenance, I'm going to be very disappointed. He laughed, wonder coloring the sound. I don't know. Shall we find out?
Together?
Always together. We're bound now, you and I. Your blood in my veins, my curse in yours. Both of us becoming something the world's never seen.
Romantic. Still disturbing, but growing on me.
She tugged him toward the door. Come on, Lord Heartbeat. Let's shock your kitchen staff and figure out what the hell we are. They left the room hand in hand. Two impossibilities walking toward a future neither could predict. Behind them, dawn light streamed through the windows that had been lightproof for centuries, painting everything gold and new and achingly alive. The transformation had begun. The castle did not appreciate the change in management. It was currently trying to kill them. "Left!" Thorn yanked Alvrin sideways as the corridor contracted, stone teeth grinding where they had been standing. "Your house has opinions about our relationship." "It's not my house." He pulled her through a doorway that hadn't existed seconds before. "I'm just its current occupant, and it knows I'm changing." "Well, can we move?" Thorn grumbled. "You have terrible taste in real estate, Alvrin." They'd been trying to reach the kitchens for the better part of an hour. The castle apparently had other plans. Stairs led up when they should go down. Doors opened onto walls. Paintings reached out with grasping hands, and the floors occasionally forgot how to be solid. "It's hurting us," Thorn realized as another passage sealed itself. "Down, always down." "The foundations!" Alvrin's face went pale. Paler than usual, which was saying something. "It wants us to go to the foundations." "What's in the foundations?" "I don't know. No one goes there, not even vampires." "Well, that's not ominous at all." A wall grew spikes. Thorn dodged, pulling Alvrin with her. "Any particular reason?" "The ones who try don't come back, and vampires are hard to kill permanently." They reached a spiral staircase that definitely hadn't been there that morning. It descended into darkness that seemed to have weight, presence, hunger of its own. "I think the castle's made its point," Thorn said. "We go down or it gets creative." "It could be a trap." "Everything could be a trap. At least this one's straightforward." She peered into the darkness. "Can you still see in the dark?" "Not as well as before. Another thing I'm losing." He didn't sound upset about it. "You?" "Better than I should." She took his hand. They descended. The stairs went down forever, or at least long enough that forever seemed plausible. The stone grew older as they descended, worked blocks giving way to rough-hewn rock, then to something that might have been carved or might have simply grown that way. The darkness pressed close, intimate and alive. "Do you feel that?" Thorn whispered. "Like being watched." The stairs ended at a door. Not wood or stone, but something organic, like crystallized blood or fossilized heartbreak. It pulsed with a rhythm that matched their heartbeats. His knew, hers changed, both synchronizing to something older than either. "This is a terrible idea," Alvrin said. "Probably." Thorn touched the door. It was warm. "But I think we're past good ideas. We're in interesting ideas territory now." The door opened at her touch, revealing a chamber that shouldn't exist. Too vast to fit beneath the castle, too alive to be architecture. The walls breathed. The ceiling was lost in darkness that might have been shadow or might have been sky. And at the center, "Is that a heart?" Thorn's voice came out strangled. It was. Massive, baroque, beautiful in the way terrible things sometimes are. It hung suspended in the air, wrapped in chains of light and shadow, beating with a sound like distant thunder. Each pulse sent ripples through reality, making the world flicker at the edges. "The heart of Virel," Alvin breathed. "It's real. Your goddess had her heart ripped out and hung in a basement?" "Not ripped, given." He moved forward as if in a trance. "The stories were wrong. We thought he betrayed her, drained her, but she gave herself, freely, split her divinity among her guardians to preserve something of herself in the world." "Then why the roses? Why the sacrifices?" "Balance." The voice came from everywhere and nowhere. The heart pulsed, and with each beat, a figure took shape beneath it. A woman made of memory and starlight, wounded but whole. Virel, as she truly was. "My guardians took my gift and made it hunger. The roses were my attempt to call them back, to remind them what they were before they forgot everything but feeding." 800 years of murdered girls for a reminder? Thorn's anger flared, that familiar fire. "That's divine justice?" 800 years of volunteers, Virel corrected gently. "Each one chosen not by me but by love.
Sisters, mothers, daughters, friends. Women who saw someone about to be taken and said, "Not them, me." That's what I was trying to remember. Sacrifice born of love, not hunger.
And it worked?
No, they were too empty to hear it.
The goddess turned to Alvrin.
Until you drank fire instead of innocence. Until she filled your emptiness with something that burns too bright to forget.
Thorn felt the truth of it, resonating in her changed blood. So what now? We're here. You're here, sort of. What happens next?
A choice.
Virel gestured to the heart.
It dies soon. My last anchor to this world. When it stops, the vampires lose their immortality. The treaties fail, the balance breaks. Unless?
Unless? Alvrin's voice was carefully neutral.
Unless someone takes it into themselves. Becomes the new anchor, the new balance.
She looked between them.
It requires two. One who remembers humanity, one who remembers divinity. Mortal and eternal combined. You want us to become you.
Thorn said it flat, not quite a question.
I want you to become what I couldn't. I was too distant, too perfect. I loved humanity but never lived it. My guardians lived forever but forgot how to feel.
The goddess smiled, sad and fond.
You're both neither. Something new.
And if we refuse?
Then the heart stops. The vampires fade. The humans inherit a world with all the monsters gone. And all the magic, too. No more healing springs, no more harvest blessings, no more small miracles, just ordinary mortality.
That doesn't sound terrible, Thorn pointed out.
No, just smaller, grayer. A world where nothing transcends the mundane.
Virel began to fade.
Choose quickly. The heart weakens with each beat.
She was gone, leaving them alone with the dying heart of a goddess. Well, Thorn said after a long moment, this escalated quickly. Alvrin laughed, short and sharp. Ha! From stable hand to potential deity. That must be some sort of record.
I'm an overachiever.
She moved closer to the heart, feeling its pull.
What do you think?
I think we're being asked to take on a responsibility neither of us understands.
When has that stopped us?
Fair point. He joined her, close enough that their shoulders touched. It would change everything. We wouldn't be us, not as we are now.
We're already changing. At least this way, we choose what we become,
Thorn said. Together? Alvrin wouldn't admit it, but it was habit for vampires to be above change. But as a human, he just feared change. Feared what may happen to him and Thorn.
Getting tired of that question yet?
Thorn smiled. Never. He took her hand. She squeezed his fingers. Someone needs to keep you from brooding for eternity. Might as well be me. Eternity's a long time to put up with my moods. Good thing I'm difficult to bore. They stood before the heart. Two impossibilities preparing to become something even more impossible. The chains of light and shadow writhed, inviting, waiting. The beating grew irregular, skipping like a stone over water. Time running out for gods and monsters and whatever lay between. They reached out, hands clasped, and touched the heart of a goddess. The world ended. The world began. Somewhere between the two, Thorn and Alvrin ceased to be singular and became something else. She was the rage of every horse kicked for being too slow, every woman told to be quieter, every human who looked at injustice and said no. He was the grief of immortality, the weight of centuries, the memory of what it meant to guard something precious. They were the space between mortal and eternal, the boundary where fire met ice and made steam. The heart didn't just enter them, it rewrote them from the inside out. Every cell remembered divinity. Every thought touched eternity. Every breath drew in the weight of what they were becoming. Too much, Thorn thought, drowning in sensation. Then share it, Alvrin's voice inside her mind now. She felt him take half the burden, felt herself take half of his. The goddess hadn't lied. It needed two. One alone would have shattered under the weight of so much possibility. Time did strange things. They lived every rose's death, every vampire's first hunger, every human prayer whispered in the dark. They saw the shape of what could be, a world balanced between wonder and mundane, where magic existed but didn't dominate, where immortals remembered mortality and mortals touched eternity.
Choose,
Virel's voice echoed.
What will you become?
Not gods. That was Thorn's first fierce thought. Gods were distant, perfect, cold. She'd rather die than become something that watched suffering from above. Not monsters. That was Alvrin's contribution. He'd been a monster for centuries, knew the weight of it, the emptiness. Never again. Then what? The answer came from both of them, simultaneous and certain. Between. Between mortal and eternal. Between human and vampire. Between the divine and the earthly. Not above or below, but between, holding the space where different worlds touched. The heart pulsed one last time and dissolved into light. They fell, but there was no ground to hit. Instead, they landed in themselves, changed, charged, challenged to be more than they were. Thorn opened her eyes. The chamber was gone. They stood in the castle great hall, morning light streaming through windows that had never existed before. The stone still breathed, but gently now, like a sleeping giant at peace. Did we? She looked at her hands. They looked the same, but felt different, like wearing gloves made of starlight. We did. Alvrin's voice was wonder and worry combined. How do you feel? Like I swallowed the sun? She touched her chest, feeling her heart beating in a rhythm that wasn't quite human anymore. You? Like I'm drowning in sensation after centuries of drought. He held up his hand, watching light play across skin that was neither vampire pale nor human pink, but something between. I can feel everything. The castle's foundations, every life within miles, the roots of mountains. That seems like a lot. It is, but... He smiled, and it was radiant. It's wonderful. I'd forgotten what wonder felt like. The doors burst open. Elisande and her followers poured in, ready for war. They stopped short at the sight of them. What have you done? Elisande's voice came out strangled. Evolved, Thorn said simply. The old way is ending. We're here to help build what comes next. We don't need help from abominations. No? Alvrin stepped forward, and the castle responded. Stones sang. Light bloomed in shadows that had festered for centuries. Then leave. Find another castle, another way. But Avron chooses its master, and it's chosen us. Both of us, Thorn added, moving to stand beside him. Where they touched, that strange light bloomed again. Not divine, not mortal, but balanced between. The age of vampires lording over humans is done. So is the age of humans cowering in fear. We're something new, a bridge between worlds. And if we refuse this new order? Then you're free to go, Thorn said. No one's forcing you to change. But the heart of Virel is gone. The old immortality is fading. You can spend your remaining centuries clinging to what was, or you can help us build what could be. What could be? Elisande sneered. And what's that? We don't know yet. Alvrin's honesty rang like a bell. Some of the vampires exchanged glances, uncertainty replacing arrogance. One younger, looking than the rest, stepped forward. Will we die? Everything dies eventually, Thorn said gently. But not today, not tomorrow. You have time to decide who you want to be without the hunger driving you. The hunger's gone? Transformed. You'll still need blood, but not to survive. To connect, to remember what it means to share life instead of taking it. She held out her hand, palm up. A drop of her blood welled up without breaking the skin, crystallizing into something that looked like a ruby made of light. Try it. The young vampire took it hesitantly, swallowed it like medicine. His eyes widened. I can taste sunlight, and horses, and anger at injustice, and tears, actual tears, and love, so much love. That's what we're offering, Alvrin said. Not an ending, a transformation, a chance to be more than what we were. One by one, the vampires made their choice. Some left, clinging to old ways and older grudges, but some stayed, curious, hopeful, ready for something different. Elisande was the last to decide. She stared at them for a long moment, calculation clear in her ancient eyes. This will change everything. Yes, Thorn agreed. The humans won't trust us. The old vampires will hunt you. You're making enemies of everyone. Or friends of everyone eventually. Alvrin smiled. We have time to find out. You're fools. Probably, Thorn said cheerfully. But we're fools together, so it's working out. Elisande laughed. Actually laughed. Rusty as an unused gate. Fine. I'll stay, if only to watch you fail spectacularly. Fair enough. As the sun climbed higher, painting the transformed castle in shades of gold and possibility, Thorn felt something settle in her chest. Not completion, they had too much work ahead for that, but rightness. The sense of being exactly where she needed to be, with exactly who she needed to be with. Regrets? Alvrin asked quietly. About becoming a bridge between worlds, guardian of a new balance, and partner to a dramatically reformed vampire lord? She pretended to consider. Nah, though I do miss my horses. We could get horses. Castle horses? Why not? If we're changing everything else, might as well start with the stables. She kissed him then, because she could. Because he was warm and alive and hers in all the ways that mattered. He tasted like starlight and shadow and the promise of tomorrow. When they broke apart, the hall had filled with humans from the village, drawn by rumors of change. They stood uncertain at the threshold, afraid to enter but unable to stay away. Come in, Thorn called. Nothing's gonna bite. Well, probably nothing. We're still working on manners. And they came. Cautious, curious, carrying the kind of hope that's half disbelief, the beginning of something new. Later, much later, when histories were written about the end of the vampire age and the beginning of the balanced world, scholars would argue about when exactly the change began. With the last rose? With the first heartbeat of an undead lord? With the choice to become bridges instead of gods? Thorn knew better. It began the moment she looked at her sister's fear and said, I volunteer. The moment Alvrin tasted fire and chose to burn. The moment two impossible people decided that together was better than apart, even if together meant rewriting the rules of existence. But mostly, it began with the next moment and the next, as they figured out what bridges do. They connect. They hold. They help others cross from one side to the other. And sometimes, if they're very lucky, they get to do it together. 5 years later. You're doing it wrong, Thorn said, not looking up from her book. I'm watering roses. Alvrin's voice carried the particular tone of someone who'd been told they were doing something wrong many times. How can I possibly be doing that wrong? You're overwatering the yellow ones. They're dramatic. They'll faint. Roses don't faint. Mine do. They're special. He appeared in her peripheral vision, dirt on his hands and sunlight in his hair. 5 years of mortality had agreed with him. He looked less like a marble statue and more like a man who'd discovered the joy of gardening badly. Everything here is special, he said, sitting beside her on the bench. Vampire roses that bloom at night, Human roses that sing, whatever those purple things are.
Those are Mrs. Henderson's anxiety flowers. She couldn't figure out how to process becoming functionally immortal, so she grew them instead.
And they help?
Apparently. She says they worry so she doesn't have to.
The garden sprawled around them, impossible and thriving. It had started as a joke, Thorn missing her horses, Alvrin learning to nurture instead of drain. Now it was the heart of New Avron, where humans and vampires and everything in between came to remember what they were becoming. The delegation from the Northern Kingdoms arrives tomorrow, Alvrin said, pulling a leaf from her hair. They want to know how we did it.
What did you tell them?
The truth? That we have no idea. We're making it up as we go, and somehow it's working anyway.
That'll terrify them.
Good. Terror's honest. Better than false certainty. Thorn leaned into him, feeling the familiar pulse of shared power between them. They weren't gods. Gods didn't get dirt under their fingernails or argue about rose care. They weren't monsters. Monsters didn't build gardens where ancient vampires learned to cry again. They were something harder and simpler. Two people who'd chosen each other and kept choosing, every day, to build something better than what came before.
Lysa's coming to visit next week, she said, with her husband and their baby.
The one who was born with fangs?
Tiny fangs, adorable fangs. She mostly uses them on apples.
The world's changing faster than we expected.
Disappointed?
Relieved. If we controlled it, we'd be gods. This way we're just us. Gardeners of possibility.
That's either profound or ridiculous.
Both, probably. A vampire child ran past, chasing a human playmate, both shrieking with laughter. The sun didn't burn anymore. Thorn's blood had seen to that, spreading change like beneficial contagion. The night didn't threaten. Alvrin's influence gentled the darkness, made it welcoming instead of hungry.
Do you miss it? Thorn asked. The simplicity of before.
Which before? When I was a hollow lord in an empty castle? When you were a stable hand expecting nothing but hard work and early death? He kissed her temple. No. Complicated is harder, but better.
Even when the castle rearranges itself because it's bored?
Especially then. Keeps us alert.
Even when the vampires and humans argue about trade agreements?
Gives us something to mediate.
Even when I steal all the blankets?
You're a blanket thief?
Terrible one. Ask anyone.
I'll manage. I've got centuries to develop counter strategies.
Only centuries?
To start. They sat in comfortable silence, watching their impossible garden grow. Somewhere in the distance, bells rang. Not funeral bells or wedding bells, but something new. Transformation bells, maybe. Becoming bells. The sound of a world learning to be different than it was. Together? Alvrin asked, as he did every morning, like a prayer or a promise or both.
Together,
Thorn confirmed, as she always would. The sun set, the moon rose. In the garden of memory, impossible flowers bloomed, tended by two people who'd learned that the greatest magic wasn't in power or immortality or divine blood. It was in the choice to change, to grow, to tend something beautiful in the ruins of what was, and to do it together, always together.